Good day, folks. This is your hillbilly historian coming to you from the hills of East Tennessee to try to enlighten you on some subjects that you may not find in your local high school or college history textbooks. Uh, there's a lot of things that government and government's control of publishers like to cover up. And that's why I'm here, is to enlighten you on things they try to hide from you. But anyway, today I want to talk about a very controversial subject: Holocaust denial, Holocaust deniers, and pro-Holocaust marketing. And let's start out with the Holocaust itself. Anybody who thinks that the Germans didn't kill millions, murder millions of Jews from 1933 up to 1945 has got their heads so far up their butts they'll never see daylight again as long as they live. Because there's too much evidence, too many proofs that the Holocaust actually occurred. Now, first we're going to talk about the Holocaust. It actually happened. I don't care who says what about what. We'll go into that a little bit later in this video. But right now, the Holocaust did happen. Now, they claim 6 million Jews. Some historians have it down to about 5.1 million. But let me tell you something. If the German Nazis murdered one damn Jew, there was a Holocaust for that Jew. But most historians agree that around 5.1 million were murdered. Now, the Holocaust marketers tried to jack those numbers up, but it was a horrible, horrific event that happened. The Holocaust did happen. Now, the German generals who were fighting against the Russians and the Allies, they didn't want their troops shooting unarmed civilians. They didn't want to be hanging unarmed civilians unless they caught partisans or something like that trying to blow up their depots and railroads and stuff. Then they'd line them up against the wall and shoot them. Those were criminals. Partisans are essentially criminals against those armies that are invading. Of course, they're considered patriots by the side that they're partisaning for. But anyway, the German generals didn't want their troops. They thought it was demoralizing for their troops to be shooting civilians. So Himmler created 4 groups. They were called the Einsatzgruppen, A, B, C, and D. And there were about 3,000 men in each one of these groups. And they were recruited from second and third tier police officers all throughout Germany. And it was their job to follow the armies into Poland, Russia, Ukraine areas and murder all the Jews, communists, Slavs, gypsies, practically anybody they can get their hands on. And the Einsatzgruppen, one of those groups left records of their murders. They all kept records, but 3 of the groups were able to destroy their records, but records from one of them survived, and so they have documentary proof that these Einsatzgruppen, it was their job to murder these people, and they murdered them in the tens of thousands. And they got all the liquor they wanted to drink because it was really devastating for these people to line Jews up and shoot them in the back of the heads and haul them out truck by truck by truck and line them up over these ditches that had been dug by dozers and whatever, and shoot them in the backs of the heads. It was really bothering a lot of them, bothering their consciences, and so they were given all the alcohol they wanted to drink and everything, and to basically try to keep them in a state of murder. But anyway, there were work camps. Dachau was primarily a work camp. Auschwitz was primarily a work camp. And but some of these camps were death camps. Birkenau, Solobar, whatever the name of that place, Solibor, whatever the name of that place was. Those were death camps. They were built for the very single purpose of murdering as many Jews as quickly as possible, bring them in with the train loads and wipe them out. Now, Sobibor was partly a work camp, but primarily to kill the Jews. And when the Russians were advancing, a lot of these camps were bulldozed, the evidence destroyed, and the Germans got the hell out of there. And Auschwitz, they destroyed their gas chambers and their crematoriums. They had an industrial sized crematorium in Auschwitz where they murdered well over 100,000 Jews. They claimed millions at first, and then it was proven through the documents that they found that the numbers had been inflated. That was the pro-Holocaust marketing people. They promoted their Holocaust the best they could. But the Holocaust did happen. I mean, you know, Eisenhower walked through one of the camps, saw the dead. Many American soldiers, films were taken, pictures by the millions. You cannot deny that the Holocaust happened unless you got your, like I say, your head up your butt so far, you'll never see daylight again. The Holocaust did happen. Now, the Holocaust has been marketed by the Jews without guilt, without reservation. They have tried to turn the Holocaust into cash. And they've done a good job of that. You know, they march out these Holocaust survivors for years and years and years. The Holocaust survivor after Holocaust survivor on TV, and they were essentially marketing the Holocaust. Now the Holocaust, they began to capitalize it, capital H, in 1972. That was because they were trying to make a product. It's easier to market a product if it's capitalized, like Tylenol, Advil, Preparation H, you know, they're all capitalized. And they capitalized Holocaust to market it. And they also have Holocaust museums in 30 plus countries around the world. There's tons and tons of Holocaust museums, even in countries that were not even involved in World War II, never participated in the war, never killed a Jew in their entire history of their country, but yet they have these Holocaust museums, and because the Jews are marketing the Holocaust. They extorted billions of dollars out of Germany after World War II when they started marketing the Holocaust and everything. They got tons and tons of money in cash, and God knows how much money they've got out of the United States. You know, we didn't kill a single Jew during World War II. We didn't want to kill any Jews. We weren't interested in killing Jews. But yeah, we have one of the biggest Holocaust museums in the world right up there in Washington, D.C. As if we're guilty of murdering Jews in World War II, and we're not. It's all about marketing the Holocaust, and the Jews ought to be ashamed of themselves to be marketing. Uh, there was a historian from Israel, Hannah Arendt, who basically poked fun at the Jews for trying to market uh, the Holocaust the way they are. And she also condemned them for prosecuting Adolf Eichmann the way they did back in the early 60s. Uh, she said the Jews and the Jewish nation was being evil in doing that the way they did, that they were no different from the Germans who were murdering the Jews and having those show trials in Germany to murder so many people. And she said morally there wasn't a lot of difference, but the Germans were, I mean, that was the epitome of evil. You know, Thomas Sowell, a black conservative, uh, truth seeker, who talks about the truth all the time, he said the road to hell is paved with college degrees. And he's right about that. One of the proofs of the Holocaust is the 1C conference, and there was records survived the 1C conference, even though they were told to destroy them. There were documents that survived the 1C conference. That was held in, I think, January of 1942. It was led by Ron, Reinhard Heydrich, and Adolf Eichmann was one of the hosts, and who organized the meeting, and Reinhard Heydrich chaired the meeting, and it was basically the top bureaucrat of all the agencies under Nazism showed up that day to plan the deaths of 11 million European Jews. That's how many they thought was in all of Europe. And they sat there and had this meeting, lasted a little over an hour, and they planned the murder of 11 million European Jews and some of the best methods of doing it, and how to get rid of the evidence and all that. So it was a remarkable meeting, and they planned it, and there's documentary evidence. Now, the Holocaust deniers, people like Ernst Zindel, Mark Weber, David Irving. David Irving used to admit there was a Holocaust, but he tried to minimize the severity of the Holocaust. David Irving is one of the greatest historians in the history of the world. I mean, no doubt about it. He relied only on original documentation. He never relied on other historians as a source. He went to the original documents, and he's the one that fell for when that Frenchman went to Auschwitz and secretly took scrapings off the walls of the gas chambers and was able to prove there was no cyanide or poisonous gas in those walls, and so there could never have been use for that. David Irving fell for that, and yes, because the Germans destroyed the original gas chambers and crematoriums as the Russians were advancing, fixing to liberate Auschwitz. They destroyed the evidence, got out of there. And when the Jews decided to make a theme park out of Auschwitz, they rebuilt the gas chambers and the crematoriums, and sure enough, there would be no gas in the cement or the cinder blocks or anything that created the gas chambers. And so the guy from France who went and proved all that there was no cyanide in the walls of the gas chambers, he was right about that. But he didn't realize that had been rebuilt for the theme park. And Jews should be ashamed of themselves, you know. But they didn't want the world to forget what an evil, evil, terrible thing happened. Now, the deniers also claim that part of Anne Frank's diary was written with a ballpoint pen, which was not invented until early 1950s. So therefore, her diary was fake. But that's not true. None of it was written with a ballpoint pen. None of it was, there were no ballpoint pen pages. So that's a false accusation. And they also claim that in the census, pre-war census, and the post-war census, that there was no reduction in the population of Jews in Europe, and especially not 6 million. And so there's questions about that. Plus, Ben Hecht, scriptwriter for Hollywood, wrote an article that was published in Reader's Digest in February of 1942. And in that article, he claimed 6 million Jews had been murdered in Europe. Now, that was 3 years, 4 years, the beginning of the first year of the war. How did he come up with that 6 million figure in February of 1942? That lives 42, 43, and half 45, 44, all of 44 and half 45. 3.5 years before the war was over, and he came up with that 6 million figure. So a lot of deniers point that out. Well, Ben Hecht was a great scriptwriter. He wrote some of the best movies in Hollywood. You may recall seeing some of his movies that he was a scriptwriter. Ben Hecht, Hecht. And he was a successful scriptwriter, but I think they were exaggerating. But what's amazing is a lot of those Jews were murdered in 1941. Well, the war began in 39. A lot of them were murdered in 39, 40, and 41. And some believe that 80, maybe even 85% of the Jews that were murdered in World War II were murdered prior to February of 42. And but Ben Hecht, it was all about marketing the Holocaust. But what's amazing is even when a Jew escaped from Auschwitz and was able to make it to the Russian lines in Moscow and flew to the United States and met with FDR and the people he had in his Oval Office that day sit there and listen to these stories about the Holocaust, and they denied it. They said there was no way. And one of these guys was nominated by LBJ for the Supreme Court, and thank God the Republican majority voted him down. He denied the Holocaust sitting there in the Oval Office. He told the man to his face he was a liar. But they were murdering Jews. But most of these camps were work camps. Uh, and the Germans fed them very little. So they stayed right on the edge of failure of health because of not enough calories and having to work. And a lot of them became sick. And of course, if you were unable to work, the Germans did away with you. And uh, when they were close to being liberated, the Germans took all the food and medicine with them. They left and took everything with them. And so these people sit there for days waiting for liberation. And when you've been fed just a minimum amount of food for months and years, and all of a sudden that food is cut off, that's it. You're gone. I mean, you don't have the strength to survive very long without basic essentials. Now, another proof of the Holocaust was and this is well documented all through, there was a department called the T4 department in Germany in which they euthanized the handicapped, the mentally and physically handicapped in Germany, and they published movies of the worst of these people and showed them in public theaters and stuff to get the public to think that euthanizing these people was a good thing. And it was pure evil, pure total evil. Taking these poor, physically handicapped people, mentally handicapped people, and euthanizing them and justifying it with terrible films and stuff. And the German people did not rise up against this. And at that 1C conference that I mentioned earlier, everybody in that 1C conference held degrees, advanced degrees from German universities. And you know, German universities were some of the best in the world at that time. And used to, a doctor wasn't even considered a good doctor here in the United States unless he had attended medical school somewhere in Germany. And these people sitting around the table plotting the deaths of 11 million Jews. It was like a faculty meeting at a major university. They had doctorate degrees, they had law degrees, medical degrees, degrees in philosophy and theology. And these people were heading up these Nazi agencies, which were becoming organized to get rid of 11 million European Jews. There's no doubt this Holocaust was a planned project. And there's proof after proof after proof. And back to the Einsatzgruppen that was recruited to follow the armies into Russia and get rid of Jews and communists and Slavs and gypsies. There were 4 of those, A, B, C, and D, and each one of the leaders of those Einsatzgruppens had the level of a PhD degree, and one had 2 in philosophy and theology. Now, think about that. Thomas Sowell said the road to hell is paved with college degrees. This guy had a degree in theology and a degree in philosophy and a PhD level degrees, and he was murdering people by the tens of thousands. He was in charge of murdering tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of people, helpless, unarmed civilians. And they murdered women and children too. And it's amazing that a man could have that kind of education and be that unethical and immoral. But You see trends of it right here in the United States. There was a Students for Democrat Society, which was a left-wing group of college students back in the 60s, part of the anti-war movement. And then they had a group which broke off from them because they felt SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, were not violent enough. And so this group that broke off decided, they held a meeting, and they decided that if they took over the United States, there were 25 million Americans they were going to immediately murder and get rid of. And these were people with PhDs and working on PhDs and doctorate degrees and master's degrees and everything. And there they were sitting, plotting the deaths of 25 million conservative Americans. And they were making out the list of the people they were going to murder if they took over the United States government. And the way you see them attack people today, those same Marxists and communists are still in the deep state in D.C., and if they could murder people like Trump and people like Elon Musk and destroy them, destroy their property, destroy their businesses, they do it. And those are the people that are a threat, the true threat to democracy in the United States. It's just awful that highly educated people, one of the best educated countries on earth, some of the best universities on earth, murdered not just 5-6 million Jews, but they caused the deaths of millions. What? 50 million people? More than that. Probably 7,500 million people. They caused the deaths of that many people. And the people that were leading the country, I mean, where does a man, you'd think a man with a college education would know when to say stop. Stop this right now. Not one step more in this murderous road we're on. This is the end of it. It ends here, now. You would think at least one at the 1C conference could have stood up and said that. You know, we're talking in the most medieval form of discussion that could be talked among humans sitting there plotting the deaths of 11 million European Jews. What kind of sick minds do that? Especially, what kind of minds are our colleges creating that can create that kind of thinking? Or what kind of thinking are our colleges creating when the weathermen who broke off from the SDS, the weathermen, could sit there with their PhDs and their master's degrees and plot the deaths of 25 million Americans? It's amazing. Our universities and colleges, somebody needs to grab every one of them by the throats and give them a shaking to within an inch of their lives, because whatever they're doing in our universities that would cause somebody like Thomas Sowell to say that the road to hell is paved with college degrees, and he ain't wrong. We need to hit our university administrators up the sides of their heads with 2x4s and wake those maggots up, because they are creating people totally without ethics and morals. And our universities used to concentrate on ethics and morals. The original charters of Yale and Harvard used to say clearly the purpose of this university is so that man could read and comprehend and understand the Bible and Christianity to a higher level than without, that that kind of literacy is what is necessary for the moral and ethical advancement of mankind. And our universities are creating people who don't understand the value of life, the value of ethics, the value of morals, and how to treat each other with dignity and respect, and that all life is valuable and all life is important. And this Holocaust, it did exist, it did happen, but the Jews have unashamedly marketed the Holocaust for their monetary benefits, and I think they've crossed the line in morals and ethics as well. And I agree, they should fight for their self-preservation, and but they have really crossed the line in marketing the Holocaust. But the Holocaust did happen, and these Holocaust deniers can be easily proven. Now, there's one Holocaust denier I'd like to mention, David Irving. Now, David Irving has succumbed to some false information that he should be ashamed of himself. Now, David Irving, he's still alive in England. He's about 89, 90 years old. He 87, somewhere in there. But still, David Irving is the greatest historian. He never relies on other historians. He's not a scribe who goes out and copies history books to create a new history book. So he's not a scribe, he's a true historian. He relies only on original documentation. And he's written the best biographies of Churchill and Goring and Hitler and Himmler and these people that you'll ever read anywhere. He's a great historian. And he made a comment one time, if you steal from one book, you're a plagiarist. If you steal from 20, you're a great historian. But he never relied on what other historians write. Everything he did from original documents. And he likes to say that there's no documentation, not a single document that Hitler ever signed creating the Holocaust. And Hitler was smart. He kept his signature off of a lot of that stuff. And but he spoke against the Jews. He wrote against them in his book, Mein Kampf. He spoke against them multiple times before large audiences, speeches that were filmed and recorded, and he spoke against Jews very much. And so the Holocaust, it's like one of our presidents said one time, the buck stops here, I'm responsible. Well, that was Hitler. He was responsible for the Holocaust. And so anyway, the Holocaust denial is interesting to look at the points that they try to make to prove that the Holocaust never happened, and every one of their points can be undermined with just a little bit of research and a little bit of proof. The Holocaust did happen, and anybody who denies it, like I say, has got their heads up their butt. They'll never see daylight again. But anyway, this is your hillbilly historian talking to you from the hills of East Tennessee, trying to enlighten you on historical truth that can be proven and documented. Thank you so much.